In the high-stakes, multi-billion-dollar world of international defense procurement, there is a brutal, unspoken truth that strategic planners whisper behind closed doors. The West has forgotten how to build ships quickly. If you look at the naval shipyards of the United States, the United Kingdom, or continental Europe, you see a masterclass in exquisite engineering, but you also see a catastrophic failure of industrial velocity. Programs are delayed by years, sometimes decades. Budgets double, then triple. Ships are delivered overweight and behind schedule. And all the while, on the other side of the Pacific, the shipyards of the People's Republic of China are operating with a terrifying, relentless, industrial brutalism. The Chinese Communist Party is launching guided missile destroyers, frigates, and amphibious assault ships at a speed the planet has not witnessed since the height of the Second World War. They are outbuilding the entire Western alliance by orders of magnitude. For the Royal Australian Navy, a force staring down the barrel of an aging surface fleet and a rapidly closing window of strategic deterrence, this industrial bottleneck was a death sentence. They needed ships. They needed them heavily armed. And most importantly, they needed them immediately. So, Australia did something that shocked the established military-industrial complex of the West. They bypassed the traditional European vendors. They rejected the slow, methodical shipyards of NATO. They looked directly to the north, tapped into the roaring, hyper-efficient furnaces of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and dropped a $6.5 billion hammer. Australia selected the Japanese, upgraded Mogami-class, to be the new backbone of its surface fleet under the SEA 3000 program. 11 cutting-edge, heavily automated, deeply lethal stealth warships. This is not just a story about buying steel. It is the story of the death of Japanese post-war pacifism. It marks the first time since 1945 that the Japanese state has exported a major, lethal weapon system of this magnitude. It represents a level of strategic trust so profound that Tokyo is literally sacrificing its own domestic naval production slots to ensure the Australian Navy gets its ships 5 years ahead of schedule. The two most capable democracies in the Indo-Pacific are no longer just participating in joint exercises. They are fusing their fleets into a single, interchangeable war machine. The Pacific Shield has been born. Welcome to Doctrine of War. Today we are executing a forensic, unvarnished analysis of the $6.5 billion deal that just rewrote the balance of naval power in the Southern Hemisphere. Here is the thesis for this episode. In modern naval warfare, technological perfection is useless if it arrives a decade too late. Speed of delivery, raw magazine depth, and manpower efficiency are the new metrics of national survival. Australia recognized that the European shipbuilding model could not deliver those metrics in time to deter Beijing, so they hardwired their naval destiny to the industrial might of Japan. If you are beginning to understand why the true outcome of the next global conflict will not be decided by diplomatic treaties, but by the relentless output of Asian shipyards and the brutal mathematics of automated warfare, hit that like button and subscribe to Doctrine of War. We cut through the political rhetoric to bring you the kinetic, logistical realities of how the free world actually fights and builds. Your support is the engine that keeps this channel operating at the absolute tip of the spear. We are going to break down the 32-cell Ghost ship, why extreme automation and massive vertical launch capacity make the upgraded Mogami the ultimate apex predator for a middle power. We are going to explore the speed of survival, how Mitsubishi Heavy Industries is utilizing block construction methodology to pump out warships at a rate that embarrasses the West, and why Tokyo gave up its own place in line for Canberra. And we will analyze the 10,000-mile strategic trap, how the massive endurance of these Japanese-designed frigates allows Australia to project lethal power all the way to the Philippine Sea, creating a unified wall of steel that the Chinese Navy cannot break. Let us begin by looking at the terrifying manpower crisis that almost crippled the Australian Navy, and the technological ghost ship that solved it. The demographic death spiral. To truly comprehend why the upgraded Mogami was the only logical choice for the Royal Australian Navy, you have to look past the missiles and the radar arrays and look directly at a spreadsheet detailing human demographics. The Australian Defence Force is currently trapped in a severe, compounding recruitment and retention crisis. It is a demographic death spiral. The Australian economy is heavily reliant on resource extraction. Massive mining conglomerates in Western Australia and Queensland offer staggering salaries to electricians, welders, systems engineers, and logistics managers. The military, with its stringent physical requirements, long deployments away from home, and highly rigid pay scales, simply cannot compete with the civilian sector for talent. This creates a fatal vulnerability for the Navy. You can allocate $100 billion to build the most exquisite, heavily armored warships on the planet, But if you do not have the physical human beings to crew them, those warships are nothing more than expensive steel statues tied permanently to the pier. The current backbone of the Australian surface fleet is the Anzac-class frigate. These ships were designed in the 1990s. By modern standards, they are incredibly labor-intensive. An Anzac-class frigate requires a crew of roughly 170 to 180 sailors to fight, sail, and maintain the vessel. As the Royal Australian Navy attempts to expand its fleet size from an established baseline to a newly mandated larger force structure under the recent Surface Fleet Review, the mathematics of manpower simply broke down. Finding the thousands of extra sailors required to crew a traditional fleet of European-designed frigates was a statistical impossibility. Australia needed a warship that could fight like a cruiser but be crewed like a patrol boat. The European contenders for the SEA 3000 program, designs from Germany's TKMS and Spain's Navantia, offered excellent, proven ships. But they still required relatively large crews. Enter the upgraded Mogami, designed by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. The Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force (JMSDF) has been battling a catastrophic demographic collapse for a decade. Japan has an aging population and a shrinking youth cohort. They faced the exact same manpower crisis as Australia, but they faced it years earlier. Because necessity is the mother of invention, Japanese naval architects were forced to engineer a solution. They designed the Mogami-class to be a ghost ship. Through extreme, unprecedented levels of automation, artificial intelligence integration, and streamlined damage control systems, the upgraded Mogami can be sailed and fought at its absolute maximum kinetic potential with a core crew of just 90 sailors. That is roughly half the crew required by the aging Anzac class, and significantly fewer than the European alternatives. The heart of this manpower revolution is the Advanced Integrated Combat Information Center, CIC. Unlike traditional CICs where dozens of sensor operators stare at isolated screens, the Mogami features a 360-degree augmented reality circular display. A radically reduced number of officers can manage the entire battle space, tracking incoming hypersonic threats, managing electronic warfare and coordinating anti-submarine helicopters, through a fused AI-assisted interface. By cutting the crew requirement in half, the upgraded Mogami single-handedly solves the Australian Navy's recruitment crisis. It allows the RAN to put 11 heavily armed hulls in the water using the exact same number of sailors it currently takes to crew 5 or 6 older ships. It is a masterpiece of demographic engineering translated into steel. The automated apex predator. But a small crew means absolutely nothing if the ship cannot survive a high-intensity missile exchange in the South China Sea. If a ship is undergunned, it is just a target. This is where the upgraded Mogami separated itself from the pack and established itself as the ultimate apex predator. When the Australian government released the requirements for the new general-purpose frigate, there was a fierce debate within defense circles regarding magazine depth. The sheer number of missiles a ship can carry into combat. In modern naval warfare, facing the People's Liberation Army Navy, your ship will be subjected to saturation attacks. The enemy will fire dozens of anti-ship cruise missiles and suicide drones at you simultaneously. If your ship only carries 16 interceptor missiles, and the enemy fires 20 weapons, your ship will die. You must have a deep magazine to absorb the initial blow and strike back. Several of the European contenders offer designs equipped with a 16-cell vertical launch system, VLS. In the unforgiving calculus of Pacific warfare, 16 cells is bringing a knife to a gunfight. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries looked at the Australian requirement and brought a sledgehammer. The upgraded Mogami-class frigate will be equipped with a 32-cell 41 Malawian Kwacha's vertical launch system. Double the firepower. Double the magazine depth. Let us break down the kinetic reality of 32 VLS cells. If the Royal Australian Navy decides to optimize the ship for pure self-defense and fleet protection, they can quad-pack the evolved Sea Sparrow missile ESSM, Block 2. That means 4 missiles fit into a single cell. A 32-cell Mogami could theoretically carry 128 advanced, active radar homing anti-aircraft missiles. That is an impenetrable wall of defensive fire capable of shredding an entire Chinese bomber squadron's payload. Alternatively, the VLS cells can be mixed. The Mogami can carry the SM-2 Standard missile for long-range area air defense, effectively serving as an air warfare shield for commercial convoys. But the true strategic terror lies in the offensive configuration. The 32-cell 41 Malawian Kwacha's VLS is strike length. This means it is physically deep enough to house the Tomahawk Land Attack Cruise Missile, TLAM. A Japanese-designed Australian crewed frigate, operated by just 90 sailors, can sit quietly in the Philippine Sea and unleash a volley of Tomahawk cruise missiles capable of obliterating command and control bunkers, air bases, and fortified anti-ship missile batteries located over 1,000 miles away on the Chinese mainland or highly contested artificial islands. This is fused with the ship's most distinctive physical feature, the Unicorn Unified Complex Radio Antenna, MAST. This sleek, stealthy, horn-like structure at the top of the ship houses all of the vessel's primary radar, electronic warfare and communications arrays. By housing them in a single radar-absorbent structure, the Mogami achieves an incredibly small radar cross-section. To a Chinese search radar sweeping the ocean, this 5,000-ton heavily armed warship looks like a small, harmless fishing trawler. It is an invisible, heavily automated assassin. It is the ghost ship of the Pacific, the Western bottleneck. You cannot understand the strategic genius of buying Japanese warships without understanding the absolute disaster of current Western shipbuilding timelines. For the last several years, the Royal Australian Navy's primary surface combatant program was the Hunter-class frigate. Based on the British Type 26 global combat ship designed by BAE Systems, the Hunter was intended to be the premier anti-submarine warfare vessel in the world. But the program has been plagued by the exact industrial diseases that are currently rotting the Western defence base. As Australian defence officials continuously modified the British design, adding the massive, incredibly powerful Australian-made CA phased array radar system, American Aegis combat systems, and modified weapons packages, the ship suffered from severe weight creep. It got heavier, wider, and vastly more complicated to build. The costs spiraled out of control, reaching an estimated $45 billion. But more importantly, the timeline stretched into oblivion. The first Hunter-class frigate is not expected to be fully operational until the early 2030s. This timeline is a strategic catastrophe. Intelligence agencies in Washington, London, and Canberra all agree that the period of maximum danger in the Indo-Pacific, the so-called Davidson window, when China's military advantage over the US and its allies peaks, and a move on Taiwan is most likely, is the late 2020s. Specifically, between 2025 and 2030. If the balloon goes up in 2028, the Australian Navy cannot ask Beijing for a 5-year timeout while BAE Systems finishes building the Hunter-class frigates in South Australia. Australia found itself staring into the abyss of the danger decade with an aging fleet of Anzac frigates that are increasingly outgunned by modern Chinese variants. They desperately needed an off-the-shelf, proven design that could be delivered immediately. When they went to the market for the SEA 3000 program, the Europeans offered impressive brochures and promises of sovereign manufacturing. But Mitsubishi Heavy Industries offered something far more valuable: raw, unadulterated, industrial velocity. The furnaces of Mitsubishi. If you want to witness the pinnacle of modern maritime industrial efficiency, you do not look to Europe. You look to the Mitsubishi Heavy Industries shipyards in Nagasaki and Tamano. While Western shipyards treat the construction of a frigate like the bespoke crafting of a luxury cathedral, taking 5 to 7 years to complete a single hull, MHI treats warship construction like a highly optimized, relentless automotive assembly line. Utilizing incredibly advanced modular block construction methodologies, digital twin software environments, and a massive, highly skilled and perfectly integrated sovereign supply chain, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries is currently pumping out Mogami-class frigates at a staggering rate of 2 ships per year for the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. Let that sink in. 2 advanced, 5,000-ton stealth frigates entering the water every 12 months. It is an industrial rhythm that no nation outside of China can currently match. When Australia awarded the $6.5 billion contract to Japan, it was entirely based on this speed. The agreement stipulates that the first 3 upgraded Mogami-class frigates will be built directly in Japan, entirely by Japanese workers in Japanese dry docks. This is where the geopolitical magnitude of the deal comes into stark focus. To meet Australia's desperate requirement to have the first ship delivered by 2029, the Japanese government and MHI had to make an unprecedented sacrifice. The Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force requires these exact same upgraded Mogami ships for its own defense against China and North Korea. Their production line was already fully booked. To build Australia's ships by 2029, Tokyo literally had to hand over its own domestic production slots. Japan delayed the acquisition of its own sovereign warships to ensure that the Royal Australian Navy gets armed first. This is the ultimate expression of strategic trust. You do not sacrifice your own national defense acquisition timeline for an ally unless you believe, with absolute certainty, that your survival and their survival are inextricably linked. It is the physical manifestation of the Japan-Australia axis. Following the delivery of the first 3 ships from Japan, the subsequent 8 frigates will be built at the Henderson Defence Precinct in Western Australia, utilizing the technology transfer and industrial blueprints provided by Mitsubishi. This secures Australia's sovereign shipbuilding capability for the 2030s. But it is those first 3 Japanese-built hulls, arriving before the end of the decade, that serve as the immediate vital stopgap. Mitsubishi isn't just selling Australia a ship, they are selling Australia time. And in the mathematics of modern deterrence, time is the only commodity you cannot buy more of. The tyranny of distance mastered. To fully appreciate why the upgraded Mogami is a nightmare for Chinese naval planners, you must take its technical specifications and lay them over a map of the Indo-Pacific theater. In naval warfare, range is everything. A heavily armed destroyer is utterly useless if it runs out of marine diesel fuel halfway to the combat zone. For European navies operating in the Mediterranean or the North Sea, distances are short. A frigate can afford to have a range of 4,000 or 5,000 nautical miles because friendly ports are always nearby. Australia does not have that luxury. The Australian continent is governed by the tyranny of distance. If a Royal Australian Navy frigate deploys from Fleet Base East in Sydney to patrol the vital choke points of the South China Sea, it must travel over 4,000 nautical miles just to reach the operational area. It must then loiter, fight, maneuver, and eventually return home. When analysing the contenders for the SEA 3000 program, the Australian government demanded extreme endurance. The upgraded Mogami-class completely obliterated the competition in this metric. It boasts an absolutely staggering, massive operational range of over 10,000 nautical miles. This is not a coastal defence vessel designed to hug the shoreline of Sydney Harbour or protect the port of Perth. This is a deep-water, blue ocean power projection platform. A 10,000 nautical mile range means an Australian Mogami can launch from a sovereign base in the southern hemisphere, sail all the way up through the Indonesian archipelago, penetrate the first island chain, conduct high-intensity, sustained combat operations off the coast of Taiwan or Japan, and return home without ever requiring a vulnerable at-sea refueling evolution from a slow-moving fleet oiler. This endurance fundamentally alters how Australia can fight a war. In a conflict with China, the primary mission of the Australian surface fleet will not just be sinking enemy combatants. It will be the desperate, vital task of sea lines of communication, SLOC, protection. Australia imports almost 100% of its refined liquid fuels from Asia. If a war kicks off, Chinese submarines will immediately hunt the commercial tankers bringing diesel to Australia. The Mogami, with its massive range, its advanced anti-submarine sonar suite, and its ghost ship stealth profile, is the perfect platform to escort those fuel convoys across the vast emptiness of the Pacific, ensuring the Australian economy does not starve to death in the dark. The Philippine Sea chokehold. But the 10,000-mile range also enables a far more aggressive, offensive doctrine. It enables the Royal Australian Navy to seamlessly plug directly into the defensive architecture of Japan. Look at the geography of the Philippine Sea. It is the massive body of water bordered by Japan to the north, the Marianas and Guam to the east, and the Philippines to the west. If China wants to project power into the deep Pacific to threaten American bases in Hawaii or strike the Australian mainland, the People's Liberation Army Navy plan must break out of the South China Sea and the East China Sea and sail through the narrow straits into the Philippine Sea. The ultimate strategy of the free world is to turn those straits, the Miyako Strait, the Bashi Channel, the Luzon Strait, into impenetrable lethal kill zones. This is the 10,000-mile strategic trap. Because the Australian Mogami-class frigates share the exact same DNA, the exact same combat philosophy, and the exact same logistical requirements as the Japanese Mogami-class frigates, they can operate as a single, unified wall of steel. An Australian Mogami can sail 4,000 miles north, integrate perfectly with a Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force task group, and establish a chokehold over the first island chain. They can share targeting data, utilize the same anti-submarine tactics, and present a combined, overwhelming magazine depth to any Chinese fleet attempting to break out into the open ocean. If the Australian ship takes battle damage, or simply needs to resupply its vertical launch cells with evolved Sea Sparrow missiles, it does not have to limp 4,000 miles back to Sydney. It can pull directly into the Japanese naval bases at Yokosuka or Sasebo. Because the dry docks, the cranes, and the Japanese technicians are already perfectly calibrated to the Mogami hull form, the Australian ship can be repaired, rearmed with Japanese-manufactured, NATO-standard munitions, and sent back to the front line in days rather than months. By purchasing the upgraded Mogami, Australia did not just buy a ship. They bought the keys to the entire Japanese maritime logistical network. They created an overlapping, highly redundant, geographically massive area of naval dominance. The fused war machine. The $6.5 billion acquisition of the upgraded Mogami-class frigates is a watershed moment in the military history of the 21st century. For decades, the standard operating procedure for the Western Alliance was strict, sovereign compartmentalization. Navies operated as isolated national entities. The British built British ships for British interests. The Americans built American ships. And the Australians bought a mix of European hulls and American computers, trying to Frankenstein a fleet together. This fragmented approach is a luxury that the free world can no longer afford. When facing an authoritarian superpower that possesses the largest shipbuilding industrial base on the planet, fighting as fragmented, isolated nations is a recipe for annihilation. The Australia-Japan Mogami deal represents the death of that fragmented model. It represents the birth of the fused war machine. We are witnessing the creation of an interchangeable, plug-and-play allied fleet. The fact that an Australian sailor and a Japanese sailor will be operating the exact same hull, staring at the exact same augmented reality combat information center, and relying on the exact same Rolls-Royce gas turbine engines, creates a level of operational brotherhood and tactical synergy that no diplomatic treaty can ever replicate. They are standardizing the tools of violence. And in doing so, they are multiplying their deterrence exponentially. The end of the pacifist illusion. But perhaps the most profound consequence of this $6.5 billion transaction lies not in the steel of the ships, but in the political shockwave it has sent through the halls of power in Beijing. For 75 years, following the absolute devastation of the Second World War, Japan lived under the strictest pacifist constitution on Earth. The idea of Japan exporting lethal, high-end, offensive weaponry to a foreign nation was not just politically taboo. It was legally forbidden under the strict interpretation of the three principles on arms exports. The Chinese Communist Party built its entire strategy for regional hegemony on the assumption that Japanese pacifism was a permanent, unbreakable feature of the geopolitical landscape. They believed Japan would never become an arsenal of democracy for Asia. They believed that if they pushed hard enough, Japan would simply fold inward. The sight of the Japanese government deliberately amending its export laws, explicitly authorizing Mitsubishi Heavy Industries to sell 11 heavily armed, 32-cell VLS stealth warships to the Australian military, is the ultimate, terrifying proof that Beijing's strategy has catastrophically backfired. Chinese aggression has achieved the impossible. It has cured Japanese pacifism. It has forced the sleeping giant of Asian industry to wake up, rearm, and begin aggressively arming its allies. The $6.5 billion fleet is not just a procurement program. It is a declaration of intent. It is the Anglosphere and the Japanese state looking at the rapidly closing window of the danger decade, identifying the industrial bottlenecks of the West, and ruthlessly bypassing them to ensure that the Pacific remains free. The upgraded Mogami is the ghost ship that Beijing never saw coming. It is heavily automated, lethally armed, and arriving 5 years ahead of schedule. The Pacific Shield has been forged, and the authoritarian empires of the world are officially on notice. Thanks for watching Doctrine of War. Do you believe that relying entirely on Japanese shipyards for our most critical surface combatants is a masterstroke of speed, or a dangerous risk to Australia's own sovereign manufacturing base? Let us know your tactical assessment in the comments below. Stay sharp, stay relentless, and we'll see you in the next one.